You're here with two fighters. How are you guys doing?
They're really good. Both of them have got good challenges, and that's what we like. We thrive on challenges. We don't like easy fights because they become boring. And they're both in great shape mentally and physically, and we're just, at the moment, we're relaxed, trying not to be too excited, but we're looking forward to it.
Ryan Burnett is world champion. Do you think he got used to that?
If you're asking, he's certainly not complacent. He is so driven and so determined, and he understands that, just like football teams like Man United, when teams play Manchester United, they play better than they normally do. Ryan understands that when guys now fight him, they're going to fight better than they have before, and he needs to prepare accordingly, and I'm confident that he has.
He fought the last two times. He fought in his backyard, so this is a different crowd. Do you think you have to prepare differently for that?
Absolutely not, because when they fight in their hometowns and they have big support, I tell them that it means nothing. If they fight away where they have no support, I tell them it means nothing. So I have to be consistent, because really all that matters is what they do every second of every round. It doesn't matter what's going on outside the ring. All that matters is what he does and what his opponent does.
Josh Kelly, I read that you said he's the most talented fighter you've ever trained. What makes you think that? What
I've seen him do. As the more I get to know him, the more I realize how high his IQ is as a young fighter. He's now 24 years old, and it would be unfair to his ability not to test him. He needs constant challenging, because if he doesn't, he won't progress how he could do. And there's so many things that he does instinctively that it makes my job as a technical coach much easier. And with Josh, it's really about guiding him in the right direction, because he really can do so much so very early in his career.
His opponent is very experienced, and Molina said he didn't know him, so he had to look him up on the internet. Is that extra motivation?
No, Molina is what he is, right? I mean, he's shown what his level is. We've seen him at his best, and we watch him at his best, and that's what we prepared for. But no one has seen Josh Kelly at his best yet, because he's still improving so much. In the last 2 months alone, I've seen huge change in his understanding of little things in sparring, and that's what I'm excited about. I want him to start to show people what he's really about, because at the level he's been fighting guys, it's like, yes, great, he looks a great prospect. He looks a great prospect, but you don't know he's a great prospect until you challenge him. And Saturday night is the first proper challenge for him.
It's only his 6th professional fight and 4 knockouts. Molina has never been knocked down. 5 knockouts, sorry. Has never been knocked down. So what's the goal for Saturday night?
So he's going to have to concentrate for 10 rounds of 3 minutes. He's going to have to concentrate and keep repeating what he does. And the challenge for Josh is that he will find answers for Molina very early in this fight. He will read Molina very quickly in this fight. And what he needs to realize is that you can't just read someone in the first round and make them pay for it. You have to do it every round. And you can't sleep on opponents who have got world titles in their houses. And that's the challenge for him, because I do expect Josh in the first round to show Molina that he's got the answer. But because Molina is tough and experienced, Josh will keep having to find the answer.
This is a massive card, 2 heavyweight fights, and one of those guys you already trained, David Price. What do you think? Is it his last chance to get back in the mix?
Certainly, I think certainly his last chance in terms of being a viable world title challenger. David Price is the hardest puncher I've taken on the pads, by far.
Honestly?
Yeah, his biggest enemy was himself and his own anxieties. But here's the interesting thing. His worst fears have happened to him on more than one occasion. So he has nothing to fear, because he now has nothing to lose. The worst thing that could have happened to him in boxing has happened to him on more than one occasion. If you take somebody like that who can punch that hard, if when that first bell rings, he kind of takes that careless, carefree attitude, almost like a kamikaze attitude, where he just doesn't care what happens, that could make him his most dangerous. And if he does, and he hits Povetkin on the chin, it's going to be interesting, because I know how hard David hits.
It felt like Eddie Hearn tried to take the pressure from David Price, because he said, you don't have the pressure, you don't have anything to lose. It was like a mantra. But he can't really believe that, because another loss, another knockout would everybody said, oh, but he's doing it again and fails again.
Yeah, I think what Eddie was saying in a polite manner to David Price was no one's expecting you to win here. That's what he was saying, right? But he was trying to do it politely. But David Price knows. He said, people aren't expecting me to win. And when I like the fact, normally you wouldn't want to hear a fighter say that, but because I understand David's weaknesses and strengths, for him I think that's a good thing. Because it could give him that chance just to go in there and with all abandon just throw his hands with no fear of consequence. Because if somebody like him does do that, he becomes very dangerous.
David Price lost twice to people that got tested positive for banned substances afterwards. Povetkin was tested twice last year. Do you think those...
he was tested twice or he failed twice?
He failed twice. He failed the test twice last year.
Right, for what?
Like meldonium.
Right, which only went on the banned list last year, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing was, I don't remember the substance, but it was a bad thing, a steroid.
An anabolic.
Yeah.
Right.
So do you think it's fair to give him another chance and to put David Price in front of another drug cheater?
So he's tested positive for an anabolic after a fight. Who was the fight against?
Before a fight.
Who was the fight against?
Stavern. And then Stavern said, I'm not going to fight you.
Right, now I remember, yes. No. I don't think he should have an opportunity this soon, if I'm honest. And this is something that I feel very passionate about because everybody criticises the cheats, the fighters, right? And that's right, we should do. No one's criticising VADA. No one's criticising the dope testing agencies. No one's criticising the governing bodies, and we should. Because here's the scenario. A fighter takes steroids and wins a fight and knocks the other guy out. He wins, he loses. They both get paid, and off they go. Once the money's in his bank account, they find that he's failed a dope test. So they have a hearing, and they say, well, you're guilty of failing the dope test, we're going to fine you. The people that fine him keep the money. The guy that got knocked out, not only got knocked out and hurt, so effectively assaulted, but he doesn't get any compensation financially for it. He gets a loss on his record, so his value goes down, and he doesn't get the chance to have an opportunity. So I'd like to see the whole system changed. I'd like to see, firstly, VADA and the people, let me go up a level. The people that put these substances on the banned lists need to inform VADA. If it's VADA that does this, they need to inform all the governing bodies of all the sports regularly when they add a chemical to this banned list. All these governing bodies are then responsible for informing all of the fighters or the footballers who are registered with them. Here is the ban list in its entirety. It's now your responsibility to make sure that you don't take any of it. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people failed dope tests not knowing that it was on the list. So I think the whole thing needs to be turned on its arse, needs to start from the top. And then once it is started from the top, the punishments need to be more comprehensive. Decisions need to be reversed. David Price lost twice to people who failed dope tests. So where it says he lost, he should now win by disqualification. And the people who have the wins on their record should lose by disqualifications. But until we start speaking sense and actually applying logical steps, I don't see a solution. I just see a continued mess because the money behind the business is too powerful, too irresistible, and it will continue more and more.
Talking about positive things, the main event, Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker, how do you see the fight go?
Well, it's potentially Anthony Joshua's best opponent yet. Vlad was old when they fought, but carried all of that experience. And Vlad had that fight to win. He had it in his hands, and he let it go. He let it go, I think, partly because of his hesitancy. When he had Joshua in trouble, he second-guessed himself for too long, and maybe his age as well. Joseph Parker doesn't have those two issues. He's not bringing those issues to this fight. He's bringing youth, boxing ability, speed, and freshness. On the flip side is, we know that the occasion won't affect Anthony Joshua because he's proven it. And I just wonder whether the occasion might overwhelm Joseph Parker, as well as the physical challenge in front of him may overwhelm him. But if it doesn't, and we're getting to round 4 or 5, we've got a really interesting fight on our hands.
Already 4 or 5?
If we get into round 4 or 5, it could be interesting.
The Takam fight, Joshua looked like very big, and he was gassing out in the later rounds. Now he looks much leaner. Do you think that was the consequence?
Yes, I think because he's a young champion, he's still finding his way. And I think he's still experimenting with his own preparations because he was a champion so early. But he's smart enough to know, well, I looked terrible in that fight. Why did I look terrible? How did I feel? And then make the changes. So I kind of think he's teaching himself how to prepare, which is credit to him. And Carlos Takam didn't have to do too much to make Joshua look a little bit limited. He just looked after himself. He bounced on his toes and just kept moving out of distance. Now I know Carlos Takam can look after himself. He can probably look after himself a little bit better than Joseph Parker. But Joseph Parker does bring some firepower of his own. Not necessarily in his punch power, but in his boxing ability and the fact that he has got a good boxing brain and quick hands.
Finally, talking about David Haye. He tries to get back into the ring in May 5th against Tony Bellew again. What do you think? If he's fit, he probably knocks him out, but is there a possibility that he's on 100%?
I don't know. He's 37 years of age, so he won't be in his prime. But what I can see is that he is lighter. Now, I know that David is most dangerous when he's light. When he fought Derek Chisora, for example, he weighed, I'll say it in English, he weighed 15 stone 1, but he had jeans on. He was actually 14 stone 12. And I know that when he's at his lightest, he punches harder because his timing is better. I can see from his appearance that that's the route he seems to be going down. Now, I always have to pick David to win because I know what he can do. And if he is light and he is fast and sharp and his timing's there, then you still have to pick him as the favourite. But don't underestimate Tony Bellew, because what did happen in the first fight is that Haye did land clean shots on Bellew's chin and Bellew stayed there. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's a better fight this time round than the first one.
David just recently said that he rarely got into a fight 100% fit. Is that true? Well,
his best condition without injury was Enzo Macronelli when he unified the cruiserweight title. And that training camp, there were no injuries. Even the fight with Jean-Marc Mormec, he had some metal splinter in one of his eyes during the training that we had to deal with. He's always had injuries through his career. Macronelli was the one fight when there were no injuries, and injury-free, he's a formidable fighter. But he was cursed with a lot of injuries. Even in the Valuev fight, he was injured in the build-up to that. So I can understand the frustrations that he's had over the years. I think he'll probably be a lot smarter now, not allow himself to get injured by being lighter and healthier. So I do think you'll see a better version of him on May 5th.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thanks for talking to Fighting Pride at a booth.
Fighting Pride.
Thank you.